how to rid your sinus and lung mucus with salt. This is literally a $2 cure. And salt might be the missing weapon that your sinuses are begging for. Using simple salt is one of the best things that you can use, but you need to understand what type of salt, because if you use the wrong one, it can actually burn the sinuses. So the first thing you need to know is that mucus is not the problem. It's the strategy. And a lot of people that have sinus issues, they have inflammation for sure, but usually it's not a deep infection. And when you have something that is incorrectly diagnosed and you treat it with a medication, you actually suppress the symptoms deeper and they hang around a lot longer. Your body deploys mucus as a trap to engulf the bacteria or engulf the mold or the particles that might be irritating the upper respiratory tract. Now, this is really an immune reaction, okay? And there might be microbes involved. There also could be a fungal infection involved, or even a mold infection, or even a viral infection. So don't right off the bat assume it's an infection that you need to treat with antibiotics. And the reason for that is that antibiotics only work on bacteria, not on mold, not on fungus. And when you take an antibiotic for bacteria, it kills off the good bacteria, which is there to keep the fungus in check. And this is why a lot of times people will have an overgrowth of a fungal infection after they have this antibiotic. Deep inside of your sinuses, you have these little tiny hairs. They're called cilia. And right underneath these hairs, you have mucous membranes that are probably swollen if you have mucus. And the purpose of the mucus is to help clean out the cilia of any type of debris or microbial pathogen that's in there. So you can kind of look at it like a conveyor belt that's pulling stuff out of your lungs and it's trying to clean things up. And when your body detects a foreign invader, it's going to increase this thing called histamines, which is going to create more mucus. That's a normal defense mechanism. You actually want that to happen. Many times people mistakenly do some type of a suppressant to mucus, right? And it pushes it deeper into the tissues instead of pulling it out. So I just really want you to understand what's happening so you can do the right thing. And it's usually something not to worry about. And I'm going to show you a really good remedy for this. So just hang in there. And a lot of times when you have mucus, it's a good thing. Your body gets rid of whatever's in there and then it goes away. But sometimes it persists because it becomes too sticky or clogs things up. And now the cilia cannot move and everything is kind of stuck deep inside. And then here the person is having a chronic sinus problem, which affects your sleep. It can cause sleep apnea and breathing problems because now you could really only breathe through your mouth when you're sleeping, which is a pain in the butt. Salt creates what's called an osmotic shift. What does that mean? It means that it's pulling water out of something. And how does it do it? Through dehydration. Because remember that osmotic effect, it sucks the water out of these microbes. So what it does to the bacteria and fungus and mold is it sucks the water out, making that microbe dehydrated. It's dead, okay? What it does to the mucus is it actually takes the water out. So then everything is thinner and it can actually move out of our bodies a lot easier. The second thing that salt does is it directly destroys bacteria, mold, yeast, and fungus. And the third thing that salt does, in addition to taking the water out of the mucus, it actually has something called a mucolytic effect, which basically thins the mucus. It breaks it down, not necessarily just by pulling the water out, but just by thinning the mucus directly. And this is why simple sea salt is one of the best things to remove mucus from the body. Now, one of the really interesting things about this mucus is it's super common to have it react to mold. Some mold growing in your house. So you really need to get that checked. Whether your basement, maybe there was a recent leak in your house with water and you have mold in there, and not realize that is one of the root causes of your sinus problem. So here you are doing this salt flush and it keeps coming back because the root cause needs to be identified. Sometimes it also can be histamines in foods, and I'm going to put a link down below for more information about that. But the other really important part of this puzzle is vitamin D. Vitamin D is one of the most important nutrients to support the immune system, especially if you're predisposed to mold or you're predisposed to having sinus infections or lung infections. And because people don't get enough sun, especially during the winter, this is why they have more problems in the winter with their sinuses than during the summer. One last thing about food. A lot of times just eliminating dairy. So many people have a sensitivity to dairy that can create more mucus. So you also might want to look at that as being an issue. If you have a sinus problem that's chronic, okay, suspect a fungal infection, the salt's going to help with that. If you have more of a sinus problem during the winter, suspect more of a vitamin D deficiency, and the amount of vitamin D that you really need is about 50,000 IUs per day. Get your vitamin D with K2 and add magnesium so it can work a little bit better. But I would take your vitamin D closer to the evening so when you go to bed at night, it can work all night long. All right, so now let's talk about how we're going to use the salt as a rinse. There's a couple different ways you can do this. There's a thing called the neti pot, where you're putting warm water in there and you can dissolve like a half a teaspoon of Himalayan sea salt. That's the one I'm going to recommend. I'm not going to recommend table salt because table salt many times has additives. Use a really high quality Himalayan sea salt. I'm going to show you this clip of how to do the neti pot right here. Check it out.
Measure out 1 cup of the distilled water. So I get a little saucepan, turn it to high, put my neti pot water in there, my distilled water in there, and it only takes a minute or two to get it nice and warm. You want it warm about like bath water kind of temperature, just so it's comfortable for your nose. Not too cold, not too hot, but just right. As you can see, I use my finger to check and see if it's ready, so make sure your hands are clean if you're doing this, and obviously do it carefully. Next, I will scoop out 1/4 of a teaspoon of the neti pot salt, place it into the measuring cup, and then pour the warmed water into the measuring cup. I find that this helps mix the salt into the water a little faster. I'll then pour half of that solution into the neti pot, and I'm ready to go. So to set yourself up, you're going to tilt your head to the opposite side. You're going to put the neti pot into your nostril and then lift your elbow up. As you can see, it kind of creates an incline from my elbow all the way down, as in the water's coming out, and you're just gonna let it flow. That's kind of my catchphrase. You want to keep your mouth open so you can breathe while you're doing the neti pot, and you just try to relax into it. Once you've allowed all the water to empty out, you're going to give it a good blow, and I use a cloth napkin also to just kind of get the extra out, and you're on to the next side. So basically transfer the last half cup of water into the neti pot and all the same steps. We're going to tilt our head, place the neti pot into your nostril, lift your elbow up, make that incline, and let it flow once again.
Okay, another little addition that I highly recommend if this is a big problem where it's chronic or it's more severe is to take a Q-tip and put a little garlic oil, like I'm just talking a few drops, on the Q-tip and go inside each nostril and just spread it to create a powerful anti-pathogenic effect. Garlic is hands down one of the best antiviral, antifungal, anti-yeast, anti-mold. It's considered like a natural antibiotic. The third thing you can do is just get a pot of water, okay? And in the water, you dissolve some salt. I might recommend just like 1 tablespoon of sea salt and dissolve it in there and let the steam come up to your sinuses with a towel over your head and just breathe the steam inside the sinuses slowly and let it out. You'll have these ion particles in the air from the salty water. It'll get in there and it'll start to break down the mucus. There's many other ways you can do this. There's a salt diffuser you can buy. I think the name for that is called a halogenerator, but that's more expensive and it's really not needed. That's an option. Another couple things I would highly recommend that you drink and consume are apple cider vinegar 3 times a day. Not straight, but just take a tablespoon and some water, okay, drink it down 3 times a day. This is going to acidify the body. This stimulates the macrophages of the immune system and helps to remove mucus. That's 1 tablespoon and a glass of water before meals, or just 3 times a day. Don't forget to inspect your house for mold. There's different home tests that you can do, especially if you haven't cleaned your vents in many, many years, okay? Because that could be a hidden source of a lot of pathogens. The other thing I'd highly recommend is you want to cut out all sugar and starch, because guess what? Fungus and mold love refined carbohydrates. So cut that out, and then you won't be continuing to feed these microbes. And I would also recommend avoiding any dairy as well. All right, now that you have the remedy for your sinuses, I have a free download that I want to give to you. This free download is my daily routine in a checklist. This is a routine that I use every day to feel like I'm 18 years old, even though I'm 60 years old, and I want to give it to you for free. And so there's a little link down below. Click it and definitely download that. And since we're on the topic of sinuses, I have another video for you that I highly recommend you watch to get all the information on how to deal with not just mucus in your sinus, but in your lungs as well. And I put that video right up here. Check it out.